You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to another wonderful show here on Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Damion Lupo. Damian is a seasoned entrepreneur who has launched and grown over 70 companies from $0 to $100 million throughout a remarkable 25-year journey. In addition to being a prolific author with 12 books, Damian is celebrated for his extraordinary achievements in building multiple companies from the ground up, some of them having a 9-figure valuation. Now, he had a significant setback that saw him lose a $20 million portfolio at the age of 30, but Damian bounced back, and now he's transforming the whole retirement landscape with his retirement plan system and revolutionizing the home and apartment construction industry. Wow, Damian, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. You've done so much. So let's just try to make this really productive. That's unusual to say that on a podcast interview. But first of all, what got you started and how did you get so good at going from 0 to 100 million? How did that happen?
I did it wrong about 68 times. There's a pull, a drive as an entrepreneur. You see problems and you have to go solve them. You can't help it. So it doesn't matter if you're doing something else. You just can't, you have to go attack them. And I got thrown out of college because I was trying to solve the bookstore problem. They were overcharging and I thought I could do better. And I did, put them out of business and they threw me out of school. So it was this is just something that you have to do as an entrepreneur. And if you fight it, you're going to be miserable. And ultimately doing that over and over again with different businesses just led to a lot of things that I learned over time. And towards the end of those, you get to 70, you've learned a few things, you've screwed up most things, and you've got enough emotional intelligence and experience that when you see $1 billion opportunity, you can actually do it without blowing it up, probably. And that's where we got to.
Okay, super exciting. And, I must say that's the best way to be kicked out of college, because what that shows me is that you didn't need college because you made your own degree and that was being kicked out. It's like the badge of courage. You were kicked out because you did a better job than they were doing. So I'd be proud of that if I were you. And you saved probably a ton of money on tuition. Am I right?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually paid for school in a week. And they said, you have to shut the business down or we're going to throw you out. And I said, I'm not shutting it down. I sort of ignored them for a few days, finished up running books all over campus and paid for school. So was it the right move? Absolutely. If the wrong move would have been staying in prison inside of a system that I wasn't meant for.
Right. Being punished because you figured some critical thinking out and you should be rewarded for that. Okay. How did you get from 0 to 100 million? Which company was that and how did you do that?
So that ended up being, what's funny, it looks like an overnight success story with FrameTech, this company that's literally fixing the housing crisis by building houses with a system that does it 10 times better, 4 times faster with 99% less waste. And what that means is we've done something exponentially different. It's not just a little tweak. And it was the right people at the right time coming together with 50 years of experience with one guy, 30 years with me. And what happened is all these things came together and it was the right timing. And so 3 years ago, a napkin was what we had. And today we have this manufacturing plant that's building housing and fixing the problem, driving house pricing down and giving people better quality product and changing the landscape in America. Okay,
I'm fascinated with this because one of the solutions I was looking at was 3D printing. Is it 3D printing?
It's not. That's one of the solutions. And here's the little cool thing. Every time somebody says, is it this or is it that? I go, no, but I'm glad those things are there because it's very cooperative. This is a blue ocean. The problem is so big. I don't crap on anybody's thing. I say, that's great. We need all the solutions out there. We're not competing. We're all solving this giant problem. So it's a very cooperative space.
Okay, so for the people that are fascinated, because I can't leave this because I love real estate and construction and everything like that. What did you do that revolutionized exactly?
Well, so nothing's really changed. You mentioned 3D printing. That was like the big thing that's changed, that people are trying it. But 92% of what's built is built with sticks, wood, and it's built framed on site, guys with hammers that are out there in the wind, the sun, the rain. And so what we did is we're building all the framing pieces inside of a manufacturing plant using robots and AI and automation. And so that gives you a really high quality product when you build. Somebody hands us plans and we go put it into our system and we build all the floors, the walls, the trusses,
Mm-hmm.
and then we take it out on our trucks and put it all together. So basically we're delivering a framed house or
Prefab.
apartment.
Yes.
It's sort of prefab, but it's custom.
But then you have to get then you have to plug it to the infrastructure and the foundation, right?
Yeah. So basically somebody gives us the slab and
Mm-hmm.
they say, okay, the slab is ready. Here's our plans. And we take them
Mm.
and we deliver the
Wow.
structure 2 weeks later instead of 2 months later. So it's 4 times faster. And there's this patented technology that's really cool where we take all these boards and we finger join them together. So instead of cutting off 18 inches of every board, which you can
Mm-hmm.
imagine, you've seen the dumpsters, that's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
waste and a lot of
Yes.
just stupid. And we've removed virtually all of that. So we join all these boards together and then cut the exact pieces we want. And that
Mm-hmm.
way we have virtually no waste, which means we save about 30% of the wood, which means
Mm-hmm.
we're a lot more efficient and it saves a ton of
Mm-hmm.
money. And that's changing everything because nobody's ever done that before.
That is brilliant. And it took a bunch of brains getting together and saying, why aren't we doing this? And also, it's more ecological because we don't want to throw wood away.
No, it actually
Right.
is, what's cool is it works for everybody. The environment's
Yeah.
happy, the community's
Mm-hmm.
happy. People get better quality houses. Our houses look like furniture. They don't
Mm-hmm.
actually look like the normal wavy things. And then everybody comes in and says, this is beautiful. And then our plumbers and the people that come behind us, the other trades, they look
Mm-hmm.
at it and they say, this is cool because you've already drilled all the holes for me. And
Mm.
for the electric, for the plumbing, you've snapped lines on the walls. We've done all this stuff for them to make
Mm-hmm.
their lives easier. So everybody
Mm-hmm.
out there is saying, we only want frame tech. So it's really cool
Wow.
because there's this cooperation and we're thinking about how everybody does better, which means everybody wants to work with us because we just keep giving them more value and we're not charging them anything for it. So it's really
Right.
cool. It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah. Also, you're not worried about, is the labor going to turn up? Are they going to get injured building the house? So, and it's probably going to be, we know the whole thing about you are building a house and the architect and the builders say, okay, this is going to be 12 months. And then you talk to your friends and how's the house going? Well, it's been 2 years now. And so we're getting rid of all that, right?
We're getting rid of all, it's very predictable. We
Wow.
can tell somebody on this date, you're going to have our houses take
That's
once.
exciting. Yeah.
It takes us like a day and a half to go out to the house and put it all up versus weeks.
Wow.
In an apartment that might take 10 months, we'll do in 2 to 3.
Mhm.
So it's
Wow.
very predictable. Everybody is running into the same problem. They can't get the people to come. And when they
Hmm.
do, it takes so long that literally walls walk away. They just sort of
Hmm.
disappear and
Hmm.
the wood gets messed up with the elements. And ours is so fast and so efficient that there's really no second choice that's even remotely close. So they say, I mean, our biggest problem is we need more capacity because there's so
Hmm.
much demand because
Yeah.
we've innovated and that's what everybody needs
Hmm.
is innovation, something better,
Yes.
thinking different.
Yes. Okay. So why is it cheaper to go with you or to get a traditional build?
So right now it's the same price, except you
Mm,
save
but quicker.
75% of the time and you have a higher quality product. So there's nobody that would say, I want to have a worse quality product for the same price. I
No,
want it
no.
slower. So what that
Yeah.
means is the cost of capital. When you can do something faster in construction and more efficiently, it saves you a ton of money. So ultimately that gets passed on and these developers can do better. And then, I mean, it's going to produce more product. And if you have more
Right.
product, it lowers the prices. We have high prices because there's not enough product.
So this gets bigger and you can get capacity going. You could put a lot of builders out of business.
What's going to happen is the builders are actually we have this one niche, just the framing, and so all the developers and builders come to us. We're basically a vertically integrated framer, and so the builders
Mm,
say we need a framer and we want frame tech, and we know exactly what we
mm,
do. We don't go try to do other things. We just support the other things.
yes.
So the builders can actually build. One builder here in Central Arizona at our first plant said we were going to build 80 houses in 2025. Because of you, we would like to do 400. Can you guys deliver? And we said yes. So they're actually expanding.
Oh, so it's real teamwork.
Totally.
Yeah. Oh, they're just not doing the frame part of what they were doing. They're doing the walls and the plaster and everything else. That is
Yeah.
fascinating. Okay, so tell me your story after. And how many businesses do you have now?
There's 5 that are running right
Right.
now.
But you built. Did you say 70 businesses you built?
Yeah, it's past 70 now. It's in the
Wow.
70s. So there's been
Okay.
70 that were pre-frame tech, and between
Mhm.
losing millions to making millions, there's a variety.
Mm. Okay, so tell us about that. We always hear about success, right? We want to
Yeah.
hear, how did you lose $20 million at 30 and how'd that happen and how'd you bounce back from that?
I learned how to run trains off tracks. Like that was a big part of the story. Finding all the different ways to screw things up, and one of the biggest ways to screw things up is to chase too many things at once. and to let
Mm.
your ego take over. And I did both of those at the same time in the mid 2000s after I made millions buying houses, and I thought I was super smart and
Mhm.
talented. I caught a bull market and just happened to be grinding really hard, and then made a bunch of money. And then I thought, whoa, that was me. I'm so
Mhm.
smart. So I jumped back into the market, went into like 7 different markets simultaneously,
Mm.
developing things, building condos and apartments. And in 2007, I started to see I was running out of credit, and my
Mm.
projects all died at the same time in 2008. So 7
Mhm.
projects, instead of making me another 7 to 10 million, I lost on every one of them. And my
Mhm.
portfolio went from 20 million to -5 in 12 months. So
Mm.
like I went from driving a Ferrari to being homeless. It was a
Mm.
really big transformation in the negative direction.
Right. Okay. So, you're right. It's so funny. I hear people say, "Oh, I'm making so much money." I'm thinking, "Yeah, but the market's kind of doing that." And you'd be an idiot not to be making money on stocks because
Mm-hmm.
everybody is, right?
That's right.
Everybody's a rock star when the market's up, right?
They think they
Everybody's
are.
a rock star. They think they are. Well, I know we're not. So you lost all this money. You're 30 years old. You thought you were the biggest thing since sliced bread, right? And you had to get rid of the Ferrari. And that must have changed like your idea of your identity because people at that age driving a Ferrari and thinking they're so amazing, your whole identity takes a dive, doesn't it?
It does, because your self worth is tied to the net worth, and
Exactly.
that's a very common thing, especially with guys, especially in the 20s.
Hmm.
Anytime we make a lot of money, and this may happen with women, but guys tend to be way more egotistical,
Hmm.
and so I thought, oh, I didn't, like I'm not better than sliced bread. I invented sliced bread. Like I was so smart, and I got humbled, and then I went through the cycle of grief, and was like, wow, okay, first you deny everything, and then you
Mm,
start going, wait a second, maybe I actually did this. Then you get mad, and then
mm,
and then you end up. In my case, I went and got help, and it took me about
mm,
5 years to get back in the game, because the
mm.
trauma is so intense. It doesn't matter if you lose 20 million or 20,000. If it's everything you have and you end up
Yes.
homeless, you're going to have trauma, and you have to go through a process of working through it. Otherwise, it just sits there and buries you.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So you went bankrupt and didn't have to pay the 5 million. Is that what happened?
Yeah, what you get to a certain point where you can't just go hustle. I had somebody say, "Well, why don't you just go get a job, bartending?"
Five
And I
million.
said, "Do you have any idea how many martinis I have to make to come up with $5 million?"
No, that's the "why don't you just dot
Yeah,
dot dot" statement that drives me
yeah,
crazy. Like, please don't ever say "why don't you just," because I know there's going to be a bad suggestion at the end of that. Okay, so you probably didn't have to pay the 5 million because you could just declare bankruptcy, right?
yeah. It's when you're totally insolvent, then
Yeah, then you
it's a
can't pay.
start over. In America, you don't go to jail, but you do.
Right. At least you didn't have to pay that back. That was really lucky. That's a godsend. So you had some serious soul searching to do. Spent 5 years, got some help. You were homeless. Did you move back home with dad and mom?
No, that was like no. I mean, I literally lived out of my car for a period of time. So it was,
Oh,
and
wow.
what's
Actually
really
homeless.
interesting, it was also, I remember this vividly because it was colder and crap. I was up in northern Arizona in January,
Mm-hmm.
and falling asleep in my car and then turning it on, and then it turns off after 15 minutes, and then
Mm-hmm.
you eventually you don't wake up, and then but you wake up an hour later and you're freezing. So
Yes.
it's a horrible experience, and it's
Right.
one that I'll fight to never do again.
Very, very humbling you've been through that.
Okay.
I've been through some pretty poor times as well. And, in some way it's well, when I was in Paris, I was so poor I couldn't even eat at one point. And, I would 3 francs and I'd buy a baguette. I was like, the poor match girl. But you don't forget that and you really appreciate food after that, like a lot. Yeah.
There's a deep appreciation for a lot of things, and one of the things that I appreciated was, oh, no matter what happens, I'm not going to be eaten. Like I may not be
Mm.
eating, but I'm not going to be eaten by something. Like
Right.
that was actually a threat when I was in Alaska
Mhm.
working in the oil fields. I could
Mm.
be eaten by a polar bear, because when I took the trash out in the oil fields, there were
Oh,
polar bears, and if I wasn't paying attention, I could be eaten. But
oh,
it's very rare that your mistakes or your job, you're going to be eaten alive.
yes,
But we
yes.
we tend to think primarily we're going to be eaten by a mistake, and then we
Right.
don't try. And that was a
Mm.
huge lesson, and a blessing to understand. Wow,
Mhm.
it hurt, but yeah, okay, got it. I'm still alive.
Okay, so after that happened, I'm guessing you probably felt like, wow, I am never going to be able to make that money again. Is that how you felt?
I did, and it was crazy because I had a mentor that when I told him, I said one of the things that I was pissed about, I had a partner that had run off and stolen several $1,000,000, and
Mm,
I said, this guy, I hate him, and I want to get him,
mm,
and I was revenge,
mhm.
and he said it won't matter, and I said, we're talking millions of dollars, it will matter. I have nothing left, and he said it
Mhm,
won't matter. Eventually, it won't matter, and I said, okay, I'm just going to have to trust you, even though it's really really hard. And he
mhm,
was right. It didn't matter. It took a long time. I mean, relative. It took
mhm,
15 years from the meltdown to get to the point where it didn't matter, where a few $1,000,000 was a rounding error. Because once
mhm.
you build $1 billion company, you can imagine there's a lot of wealth created. A few
Yes.
$1,000,000, but it took a long time. He was right. I just had to let the universe get on my side and then stick with it
Yeah.
and be resilient.
Yeah, and you had to not let your Sicilian roots take hold of you.
Yeah, it's real hard when it's baked into your DNA, but yeah, this is true.
Because, we're that's renowned, Sicilian, the revenge thing, right? Ugh.
Yeah,
Okay, so you
yeah,
had to fight everything, nature and everything but I get where you're going with that. It's easy to say stuff, right? In the
yeah.
moment, okay, I'll trust you. And then, okay, sure, 15 years later, you were right, but it took 15 years to get to that point of
No,
that
nobody
doesn't
wants to do
matter.
that.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah. So, but they do, there is the psychology that once somebody's done something once, their brain knows how to do it. So even though it took you a while, your brain knew I can generate millions. So you can go do it. You just had to get over the trauma and get back on track. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting if you look at people where they are. There's a certain thermostat. There's a book. I think it may have been in.
Psycho cybernetics.
Yeah, that's one of them. It's talked about in different forms, and I
Hmm.
remember reading it in Canada. But you have the thermostat that limits
Hmm.
you in a certain band, and
Hmm.
so somebody that makes 100,000 a year pretty much is going to keep doing that the rest of their life. Somebody that
Yes.
makes 10 million a year, they just make it automatically because they do
Yes.
things and think about things differently. And so
Hmm.
once you're exactly right, once you do that, once you create this, now that I've created this unicorn, I go, oh,
Hmm.
I get it. I actually wrote a book called Unicornomics, which was like the
Mm.
precursor. It was how to build a unicorn, and it was the
Hmm.
foundational 15%. And then I did a
Mm.
lot of that, and it was actually real. Like I thought it.
Hmm.
So it was really very strange. Like think it and then you do it. So this is about as woo as I'm going to get, but it was really cool to go through that process of putting those things in place, with the mission and the people and the A+ team and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And if you do that stuff, then you realize, oh, this is I'm going to
This
make
works.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
10 million a year is what I'm going to make the rest of my life
Yeah.
by doing these things because that's who I am.
Right. It's funny. It's also the mere thing of speaking something into existence. That's kind of woo woo, but it's not.
Mm,
Speaking into existence. If we don't believe, and of course, it's not just about doing affirmations, it's about saying this will, and it's normalizing numbers too. It's all numbers. It's
right.
all a number. When you think that $10,000 is a lot of money, well, it is. If you think $50 million is a lot of money, well, it is. So it's whatever you're saying is a lot and that you're accepting as the number. Just put a zero, take it, put it. And I think that a lot of people don't understand it's just numbers. It's just numbers and what you're stating and what you believe, which is what you're saying. But also, you're saying that you just created a unicorn thing, did it? Oh, it worked. Then you wrote a book about it. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is interesting because I've seen people that are at like the 10,000 number, like they're
Mhm,
making their 10,000 a month or whatever,
mhm,
and then I asked them what their goal is. I remember a lady specifically, and she said my goal is 1 billion, and I said,
mhm.
interesting. The problem is you're being delusional because you're shooting so far past any type of
Yes.
reality. You're saying these things, but your entire conscience and everything about you is saying you're a liar, and so you're going to
Mm,
have a fight, and so you
mm,
can stretch yourself, but there's a point where if I said I'm going to go create $100 billion company, it would be so far past anything that I could connect to and even
mhm.
stretch to that it would just be rejected, and I would sit there frustrated, and I wouldn't have the providence of things coming in alignment with that vision
Mhm.
because nothing would be, the universe wouldn't believe me, and that's a big
Yes.
problem with going too far.
That is no, that's so interesting. Nobody's talked about that before on my podcast. That is so interesting because it's almost like I'm just going to say the most ridiculous thing, and if it happens, it happens. Okay, but they don't believe it. I spoke with a guy, and he had not made any money, and couldn't even afford to coach with me. And he said, "So I want to get to $1 million in 30 days." And I said, "You do? Really? How much are you making now?" "Well, I'm making like 500." I said, "Okay. That's going to be kind of hard because I literally can't coach you to do that because that's like saying, snap your fingers and create a miracle. Because there is, yes, I believe amazing things can happen, but you would have to go buy a lottery ticket for that to happen and win it for that to happen." He said, "Well, that's what I want. And if you can't do that for me, I said, I certainly cannot. But it was almost like, okay, million or nothing. I said, well, what are you going to do if you don't make the million? I probably just won't try at all. Okay. So we went from like, if I just be ridiculous and, but God is good. I said, God is wonderful. But that's like demanding and throwing a hissy fit to the universe that you got to get this or you're not doing anything. Now, that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. Okay. And I just said, no, you are correct. I cannot help you do that. Not going to happen. Then you're not a very good coach. I said, nope, I guess I'm not. Like it was so ridiculous. But that's true. We overshoot it because we think, well, I'm just going to overshoot it because maybe it'll happen. Our mind at least has to accept. That's why it's called normalizing numbers. You go to one thing. Okay, and now I'm normalized. I'm making 50K months normal. Then now I'm making 100. Now that's normal. You make it your new normal, right? But you can't go from 10 to a billion. It's not a new normal. It's never going to happen that quickly. It could happen, but it's not right. So that's not what you do. You go from normalization and go to the next and then get your goals incrementally, right?
It's a bit of an exponential shift. You can go from 1 million to 10 million because you'll have to think different. And Dan Sullivan talked about this, and it's
Mm-hmm.
easier to go to 10x than 2x.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that because you can brute force your way into 2x. You just work twice as much, and everybody can do that. Truly,
Mm-hmm.
you can work 100
Mm-hmm.
hours a week, and you can basically double,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't 10x your number of hours. So you have to think differently with new ways of everything, how you're thinking, the people around, the automation, the systems, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I find fascinating is when somebody comes in and says, "Hey, you're not a very good coach if you can't help me get to this million." And one of the things that they don't realize is that they're way overshooting in a short term and they way undershoot long term, but they don't want to do the
Mm-hmm.
long term commitment. And then
Mm-hmm.
what the big problem is the commitment. They really should be committed because they're not
Mm-hmm.
committing to themselves and the vision and the work.
Mm-hmm.
What they want to do is blame the coach. And I love when
Mm-hmm.
people do that. And I go, you're telling me the coach is the problem? The coach isn't the problem. The coach can sit there and be silent. If you're committed, you'll do the work, and the coach will just kind of look at you and nod, and you'll get it done.
Yeah.
If you would say, well, you're not going to be a good coach, you're not even committed. It doesn't even matter if you get the world's worst coach because you've got somebody to be accountable to.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing is that you've got to be committed. And I've been committed and had no skills, but I was so committed that I was like, I don't
Yeah.
care what I have to do. I will learn it. And the coaches
Yep.
were there to kind of reinforce and say, attaboy. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's all I needed. Let's go. And so that's the big
Exactly.
difference.
No, I've had terrible coaches and I figured it out myself. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'm using anti-coaching here, but see,
Yeah.
my thing is take full responsibility. Okay, it's probably not going to be great, but I'm going to make lemonade out of lemons no matter what. So, no, it's not going to be great. I'm really good at that. This is never going to be perfect. Don't expect it to be perfect. Take full responsibility. Do not lean on anybody. Do not expect them to do anything for you. Just do your best. No help, no problem. I had a coaching program that I went in. It was terrible. And I just thought, no help, no problem. No help, no problem. I was in the community. That's what I'm getting out of it, I guess. And I figured things out myself. And everybody was, how did you do that? I said, I took responsibility for their lack because my responsibility for my success is mine. And if they're terrible, I'm not going to have that story. Oh, the coaches were bad. I said, I don't want that story. Story is terrible program, made it anyway. And they said, we can't believe you got so much out of that. I said, I figured out what not to do by listening. It's the opposite sometimes. Okay, they're terrible. I'm going to do the exact opposite to be a success. And that's exactly what I did. I did the opposite, what they were telling me, because it was so bad. I thought, well, they treat people really badly here. Okay, I'm going to do the exact opposite so people actually like coaching with us. So I love what you're saying. You know what I was thinking the other day? There's two types of people in business. Okay. There's the type that say, I want this and I will do whatever it takes to get that. If it's not unethical, illegal, or immoral. Okay. Three things. That's it. Doesn't matter. It's going to be imperfect. It's going to happen no matter what. Okay. The second type is, okay, I want this, but I don't want to do that. And I don't want to do that. And that's too hard. And no, that's not good either. I want to work 4 hours a week. Da, da, da. Those are the two types. Right. And there's people that are the second type who are living in a lot of pain because they are never going to get what they want with that attitude. You know what I tell them? I say, you know what? It's okay not to want stuff, but let it go so you can just have a nice life. And then there's no anxiety. That they're stuck in that purgatory all their lives with not the right amount of motivation, want, need, desire, commitment, but still saying, but I really want that. I feel like what you're saying is, if we really want something, be 1 billion% committed, because that's what it takes. I mean, obviously, you have done a lot of work on yourself, and even in college getting kicked out, and you're like, okay, that's fine. Wonderful. So now we're fast forwarded. You've had a lot of companies. That lesson that you learned from losing everything, how has that informed your present current life?
Well, one of the things that I got really clear on is that I'm not going to be in alignment with most people, meaning I'm going to have people, and this is modern day. I've got people in my world, in my organization, that will literally look at me and say, you're a totalitarian. All you do is work. You don't go and do vacations. They'll look at me, and it used to bother me. And I used to think, well, I need to make everybody happy. And it was awkward. And now it's like, look, I'm very, very boba. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Grant Cardone's book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. I'm not interested in average. That would
Mm-hmm.
be me. It would be self-defeat. So I say, okay, I'm going to be obsessed about what I'm doing, and I'm going to be all in. And usually what that means, like today, I woke up at 1 a.m. and I was thinking and thinking, and I got out of bed at 2:45, and I'm hitting the thing, and I'm doing life. That most people are never going to go into that space because they don't have something that they're obsessed about enough that
Mm-hmm.
matters. And so all the stuff I was doing before was really just about money. And
Mm-hmm.
when that shifted into something that was very meaningful for other people, it was very external. It was like, how much money can I get for another Ferrari or for more
Mm-hmm.
hedonistic tendencies? And when that shifted to, I'm going to do something that's very purposeful, not passionate. Passionate's
Mm-hmm.
very fun until it's hard, and then you go find
Mm-hmm.
another shiny nut. With the purpose of serving other people and finding that we all have some way to do that, and then everything else becomes very secondary. And being obsessed doesn't, you don't feel like a crazy person. You feel like in your element. And so
Mm-hmm.
now I'm happy about being where I am, even if it's freaking painful, which it is a lot. And it's a grind. It is not some easy street. Creating $1 billion company, there is nothing easy about it. There's nothing simple about it, but
Mm-hmm.
it is incredibly fulfilling. And the difference between success and fulfillment is night and day. People go after success. They want the money. They want the accolades. What they really deeply want at a core level, one of our human needs, is fulfillment. And
Mm-hmm.
yet we don't understand how you get there. We think, oh, if I have a bunch of money, I'll be fulfilled. The reality
Mm-hmm.
is you're never going to be fulfilled, no matter how much money. It'll never be enough. But once you focus on the thing, not the 4-hour work week, even though Tim Ferriss had a great book, once you
Yes.
focus on the thing that you love, it won't just be that you won't be working a day in your life. You'll be working on something that matters, and you'll never want
Mm-hmm.
to stop doing it because you're loving life
Mm-hmm.
so much. That's the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get annoyed by these platitudes right, left, and center. Like, oh, it shouldn't be work, it should be play. What? No, I work and I love it. There's
Mhm.
all these platitudes and only do what you love and the money will follow. No, that's not true. We all know that. Do you know the Relentless book?
Yeah, I've hung out with Tim.
Yeah. So you're a cleaner. You're definitely a cleaner.
Oh,
You, yeah,
100,000%.
yeah. You don't leave anybody. Nobody's standing when you're done, right? You've cleaned.
No, it's carnage
Absolutely.
and chaos. And I mean,
Hmm.
this is like, just give me the damn ball, coach. Let's go.
Right, right.
I'll take care
Okay.
of it.
So now what I like about you, you look like you're in shape and it looks like you maybe look after your health. Am I right?
Yeah, and that was a shift. That became
Uh-huh.
important in the last couple of years. So
Oh,
absolutely.
that's good. Because part of being fulfilled is being healthy. And
Yeah,
this whole thing of, that billionaire that I don't know his name, and he was a billionaire, but was so unhealthy he couldn't get out of bed because he was like 300 pounds. Why would you want to be that billionaire? Like, why would we
get
even want
lost.
that? Yeah.
Right?
Why would you
It's
want
not
that?
hard.
Health is so important, right? It's just so important. But, I coach coaches and consultants, but I also coach very high end CEOs. And you know what the number one problem is? They have no purpose.
Right?
There's just no purpose. What you said, that they're doing that, their identity, they're having relationship problems, they're having team problems, they're having all sorts of problems because, and then if they exit, that was their whole existence. And they're like, who am I? What am I doing? And we figure it out when people have purpose, they're fulfilled. Because it's not enough. You're right. I mean, it's not enough. Who cares about buying another Lambo? They care until they don't care. And it's like, okay, another Lambo, another woman, or another whatever, right? So it's so important. I know what you're saying. You're not going to bound out of bed if it's like, oh, I got to go to my job. Nobody's going to bound out of bed for that. Now, I have a question. And I'm curious about this because usually people have some sort of faith story going on. So, what's been your faith journey? Whatever it is that you believe in all of this success and loss and resuccess and all of this.
I, so it's interesting because I hear a lot of people talking about their faith, and I hear a lot of people talking and baking in religious stories and their religion. And what I've noticed in my experience and other people, there are certain people that trust and they
Hmm.
trust. So there's a difference between trusting and believing. You can believe something, but you don't really trust it. And
Hmm.
when I see somebody of deep deep conviction, deep spiritual connection to something that they trust, it's very different because they're not sitting there playing not to lose. They're not afraid. They're going for it. That's how I live. So when I look at something, I trust it. I may be wrong. I may blow up, but I'm never in doubt because I have that trust. And people are like, well, I don't know. Maybe we should analyze. And people have different personalities, but it's because I trust in this mission and this purpose, and I trust in God, and I pour everything into that, and I don't worry about knowing everything. That's how you stay at home waiting for all the lights to be green before you leave your garage. And it's a terrible way to live. It's miserable. But most people are in a place where they don't want to trip, they don't want to fall. And so I don't know that there's a whole lot, like they can say, I'm deeply religious, I'm deeply spiritual. And then I go, you're not acting like it. And that's the big difference. I live a certain way, and then people will say, well, you should be more this. And I go, you can say whatever you want. I feel incredibly connected to the source, to my God. Because I live it. So there's an alignment, there's an integrity between what I say, what I believe, and what I do. And most people do not have all three. They have a couple, maybe, but when you have three, everything changes because you're not sitting there anxious all the time. Like, what happens if, oh man, and you're not lying to yourself. And that's the other thing. It's really, you can tell when somebody's saying something, you're like, you don't really believe that. You're saying it, but you're not really there.
No, they're not. No, you just formulate. You've done a couple great things on this podcast of really formulating things in a very bite-sized way for people to understand. Thank you for that, because that's true. So now, did the loss create some sort of shift in your belief system at all, or not?
I think when you get the hell beat out of you in life, it tends to make a shift. I think you get knocked off balance, and you have to. And there's 20 years of martial arts that created a lot of present work, and like you have to be very present. You have to be very in the moment and understand connection, intention, and relationship. Otherwise, you just end up on the floor bleeding. So between those things, there's these experiences. You cannot get these in a book. You can't get them in a seminar. You get them in the real world, getting your butt handed to you. And I actually am really grateful about, and I've lost everything 4 times. Now the 25 million swing was the biggest one. That was the only time I've been homeless. And I didn't enjoy it when I tried to buy toilet paper at Costco and my Amex Black Card was declined. That sucked. It was embarrassing. Yeah. But it was also incredibly humbling and helpful for me to go through the process where I said, is this what it is? Because I've been chasing this for a decade. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And then like literally in this process of figuring it out, my dad ends up getting sick and dies. And the thing that he told me right before he died, we sat there, he goes, you know what? There were so many things that I wanted to do. And I was like, you literally just stamped regret onto my soul. And I thought, okay, I got to do it all different. And that was the big pivot. It was that moment in December of 2013 when he said that everything shifted. It was all the experiences, chasing the Ferraris, chasing all the girls, chasing the money. And then hearing him say that and realizing that regret is the worst possible enemy of your life. And so I needed to make sure that I focused on never having regret and then helping as many people as possible to that place too, because regret is hell on earth.
Oh, we have so much in common. You know that, they've studied this, that they ask people on their deathbed, what do they regret? And they regret like all these things. And I was reading them the other day, and my family had posted this in a family chat. And I said, well, I literally have not one of those regrets. And I felt great because I went through them. I thought, nope, didn't travel. Nope, everything. I thought there was maybe one, maybe being more connected to God, because I think we can always be more connected to God, right? Because nobody's perfect. I said, literally, I don't have any of those regrets. And my family was like, really? I said, no, I kind of did what I wanted. I was a very much adventurous person. I didn't want to regret not seeing the world, because I knew people would say to me, I wish I traveled more. I thought, well, I'm not having that regret. So that is so true. We don't want to, what a gift in a way. I mean, it's sad for you to hear that out of your father's lips, because then it's like, oh, but what a gift to alert you. Okay, well, I don't want to say that to my kids. Do you have children?
No.
No. Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, when you do, you don't want those words to pass your lips.
I don't, because those things, we look at people and we talked about coaching and things. You were looking for examples, but the other thing that's equally as important, if not more important, is the warnings. When you have what he gave me, the gift was the warning. Sometimes the gift is an example. He was saying, here's all the things that you should never do. And I was like, God, this is terrible. This is miserable. And we cried together. And I was like, man, this is brutal. And there was nothing he could do because he only had a few weeks left until he was dead.
Right.
And it's just too late. Most people have time, but they think they always have more time. and then they just don't take the action. And the reality is you're going to end up meeting the person that you could have been in the last moments of your life. And that's going to be the place where you go, oh man. And that's not what anybody wants.
Who wants to go in that sadness? Leave your life now. Well, Damian, this has been a great interview so far. Tell me, what is the one thing? A lot of wisdom here, but what's the one thing? Let's say you were going to meet somebody and you weren't going to see him again. And they said, hey, buddy, give me some advice. What's your best thing? What's your best thing? What can you tell people about mindset or life that you want to part with?
There's when I look back, and I wouldn't change anything, but if I was back and I was, let's say I'm with my kid or somebody, and I would say the most power you're ever going to get is when you step away from thinking and caring about what other people think about you. And you're going to be crazy at times. And sometimes that's going to be exactly perfect. And other times it's going to get you into trouble, but you get so held back by all of the perceptions of what people think about you and the concern around that. And that's what limits people to this incremental growth of 2x, maybe. Like, I'm going to grow 10% personally, physically. Like, I'm looking for the 10x, and the 10x is where we go into our potential. So when you disconnect, because most people are not comfortable with 10x, they're going to look at you and say, don't do that, because if you do that, then it's going to make my choice of 2% really wrong.
Bad. Yeah.
And I don't want to be wrong. So don't make me wrong by you doing it. So you have to be willing to say, okay, I'm going to go, I don't care about this, and I'm going to go 10x. That changes everything. When you start to, because you'll grow, you have to grow. There's no way to go 10x without expanding yourself into your potential, but you've got to disconnect from all the people and all the trauma of all their beliefs and all their crap.
So funny. It's so funny you're bringing that up, because this is my 10x year. I thought that's it. You in a business, you can run and you can walk. You can't be running all the time. You will burn out.
Unless you're Forrest Gump. Come on. Like Forrest Gump.
Right. Can't be running all the time. So, I know that about business, because I've been coaching for 13 years, and you just deplete. But I walked for a bit on purpose. I thought, that's it, getting ready. And I was reading that book. Did you read the Benjamin Hardy book about 10xing that he wrote with Dan Sullivan? Yeah, it was a pretty good book. Yeah. So interesting that you brought that up. Well, Damian, thank you again for being on the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you liked this great interview. And please write a review if you liked it, or share, or turn up again. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.